Oh, shalom, my friends, shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. Don't you love that Simis music? Oh, my God. I feel so happy. I feel so freilich in my heart, which is a good thing because happiness is what we want to feel now, because we have coming into the neighborhood a man who knows from funny, a man who knows also from creativity, a man who knows from writing. His name is BILL ERVOLINO, ERVOLINO. Don't know why I had to spell it right there, because you're going to see him. We don't need to read that at the moment. We're trying to get him in the neighborhood. He was in the waiting room for a bit, and now we're waiting for him to come back. No, where are you? I admitted him. I certainly admit. Oh, no, look, oh, there he is. Oh, all right, here it goes. Shalom, wait, unmute yourself so we can hear you. Just unmute your microphone there. BILL ERVOLINO, all the way from, I'm guessing, New Jersey.
No, I'm on Long Island right now.
What are you doing on Long Island, BILL ERVOLINO?
Well, I have a very cluttered apartment here on Long Island, and I have a house in New Jersey. I have a house in New Jersey, an apartment on Long Island, so basically I live on the Cross Bronx Expressway.
I hear you. Is it help? I mean, why do you keep the house on? Don't you do most of your things in New Jersey now, or do you have to go back and forth to Manhattan?
Well, I actually came here about 15 years ago. I returned here about 15 years ago and rented this apartment from my parents, who were getting on in years, and I was helping them with different things, and I go back and forth. They've both passed, so the house is mine now, and I'm just keeping it for a while, and until I get old.
See, I'm 68. A couple more weeks. No, just kidding.
Yeah, today is my 68th birthday.
Mit Mazel McGlick. This is Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. And so let's have the goat scream for you. There you go. This is a wonderful thing.
That's it. I'm done.
Have you been a healthy and good? Is it a good time? Do you feel 68? Do you feel 28? How do you feel?
My back is a mess, and I had 3 shows last weekend, and I was getting progressively worse. And the last show, fortunately, was in a theater, and I had a stage, so I was able to sit for most of it. And I just told everybody, I have a pinched nerve and a herniated disc and whatever. And you just make the best of it. I mean, it's just, there it was, and they laughed plenty, so it was fine.
Well, I'm glad to. So, yeah, is that your main focus now? Because for so many years, you're basically a writer. Are you now really focusing on the stand-up?
I started as a real-life newspaper reporter and editor, and then went on to entertainment. And then when I was a comedy reviewer for the New York Post in the 80s, which was a great time to be doing it, met everybody as they were on their way to billionairesdom. And then I had a book come out in 1998, and I was doing the different Barnes and Nobles, and hundreds of people were coming. And so they said to me, can you do something? Because there's so many people here. And instead of just signing, I had to, so I started doing this routine. And the then owners of Bananas Comedy Club saw me and said, why don't you do this in the club? And anyway, so it's been going on for 28 years now. And
wow. So how much are you still writing, though, as opposed to?
I retired actually in 2019, but I'm still write a weekly column as a freelancer now for the Bergen Record, also known as The Record. I wrote a play that was produced earlier this year on Long Island called Frank Sinatra. It was done at Studio Theater, and I am working on.
Did you say Frank Sinatra or something else?
One word, Frank Sinatra.
Might as well tell us what is it, because we were just talking about Tony Bennett before you came on. So what is your play about?
It's about a Frank Sinatra obsessed Italian family in the early 80s living in Queens, and what happens when someone breaks out of prison because they have a crush on their daughter, and not
his own daughter, but they're okay, crush on family. Right, yeah.
There's a lot of complications to it, and it was very funny, and I was very glad to see it. But I'm working on a revision now. Just after you see it, there's so many things you think, oh, maybe this works good on paper, but not when you're performing it and so on. And So, just a couple of things I wanted to tweak, and I'll be sending it out and hopefully seeing more productions of it and writing another one.
Oh, so your playwriting is really up there, plus a weekly column. And is your column kind of a humory, Russell Bakery kind of, or
Well, it's kind of weird because it
Russell
really
Restaurant?
it started as a family thing, the crazy Italian family type of thing. And my parents always said, my father would say to me, what are you gonna do when we die? And like, what are you gonna write about? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, don't tell anybody. Like, just keep writing and pretending that we're alive. But yeah, it was funny because as I was getting older, I still seem to relate. Older people liked the column, but also teenagers and early 20s people liked it because I was complaining about my parents all the time. So they related to it. And, even though you're getting older, that's the age old thing. Your parents exist to drive you crazy and you love them as long as you love it, like All in the Family, as long as they love each other, they can do anything and it works.
But once they did pass, did your column shift? I mean, you can still obviously talk nostalgically about, but or did you start to
Now,
move?
well, I kind of moved on to talking about my niece and the guy she's dating, and there's always the dog who drives me insane. My aunt became kind of like my mother, and I mean, and then a lot of times, a lot of it is kind of nostalgic. I want to tell a story about something that happened, on Christmas or Easter or whatever years ago, and or Passover, and
Thank you.
and
For adding that one in
I
there.
try to get them all in there. And but you
No,
start out
that's my oat. Yes.
you start out with something new that's happening, whatever, and then it works its way into the memory, and you kind of tie the present and past together. And people like stuff that they relate to. And I was just thinking earlier, like what people are telling me, oh, go see this comedian, that comedian. I spent most of the 80s in comedy clubs, like 2 a night. And then watching people, then performing and sitting in the club while other people are performing. And to be honest, now I watch like a Black lesbian comics. The stuff that I relate to now, I've heard it a million times. So I'm looking for new experiences and people telling me about their lives. I think that's a big part of what comedy's become.
Were there when you were reviewing for the Post, were there one or two people that you remember who you thought would be huge and didn't become huge, but they deserved it because they were that hysterical?
Well, I had to pick 2 people when I was leaving that I thought would become huge, and I picked Jon Stewart and Anthony Clark, who had a show on CBS that ran for like 7 years, and I forget the name of it. But
Who wrote it? Anthony Clark wrote the show, or
do you remember him? It was a family type sitcom, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name of it, but he was very successful. I don't know what happened to him after that. But,
and Jon Stewart, yeah, Jewish guy.
Yeah, one person I thought was going to be very successful and has had sporadic things was a Roger Kabler, who was a impressionist, a terrific impressionist, but he's now doing he had some problems, and I think what he's done now, he's made a movie about it, and he's going to all the film festivals with it, about how he kind of had kind of not quite multiple personalities, but he was getting into these personalities, and when Robin Williams died, that Robin Williams was his real, I guess the main thing he did a Robin Williams show, and he had kind of a thing happen to him when Robin Williams died, and so he made a movie about it, and documentary, and he's been going around the country with it and performing his show, and he's doing very, very well with it. He's just a terrific guy. He was here about last year. He came to visit me on Long Island, and he showed me the movie, and we just talked about it. And I've been a big supporter of his forever, so I'm glad to see now that he's doing that. As far as other people, sometimes there's a lot of people in comedy that have a lot of problems, and there have been a lot of people that kill themselves. And it's very, I mean, I think it's been very hard. You see a lot of the Borscht Belt comics that stayed around and kept working, but they saw people coming up who get these big TV deals and were making billions of dollars, not quite billions, but millions and millions of dollars. And so, but I think a lot of those comedians were kind enough to help bring along these old timers with them and give them roles on their shows and things. But there were other comedians that were not, you know, I don't know if I should even mention names, but I mean, a couple that did commit suicide, and
Well, who else besides?
it was sad, really.
Well, can I ask you? Because Dave, the producer of this program, he was a theater critic for many years, and one of the things when you would go out to away from New York and away from California is the critics of theater had to be somewhat careful because they were in smaller communities. How much do you hobnob with? How much do you become friends with actors, directors, writers when you then have to go and criticize their work positively or negatively? So let me ask you a question. How close or chummy were you able to get with the comedians that you would see 2 times a night going to Chuckles Bananas to, you know?
Yeah, other people. I mean, I worked, when I was working there, I was almost exclusively in Manhattan. And, you know, people would say to me, I come and see this guy, Chris Rock, come and see Adam Sandler. You know, these are new people, give them some, you know, write about them if you like them. And I'd hang out afterwards and we'd talk and hang out sort of, but I didn't get too chummy with it. I know other critics have done that. I was never comfortable with it.
Right, yeah.
And there was a woman who I became friends with, who I had reviewed, named Baby Jane Dexter. She passed away a couple of years ago.
She's been on this program, yeah.
She was a terrific, we became very close friends. And I said, look, you know, I said, I can either come and review your show or I can be your friend. I can't be both because it's just going to be uncomfortable. And we had some things in common and we became very close. I mean, I was with her, you know, when she was before she died in the nursing home where she was in the actor's home, and she had a lot of problems, a lot of health problems. And, but we, you know, I spoke at her memorial service. I guess it was last year. I haven't seen it yet. They did a recording of it, but it was a very hard thing for me to do, to say, I can't review you anymore. But I mean, it's one thing or the other. So.
Well, actually, let me ask you: did you go to the Bergen or whoever for the to the Post or whoever you were writing about for at that point, and go, she should be reviewed. Can you get someone else, or does she not even get in the paper because their critic is unavailable and there's a conflict of interest?
Yeah, there was not. I mean, as far as I kind of brought Cabaret to the Post, because to the Record, because they weren't really covering it, and so I was covering it for a while. There was really no one else to do it, and when I mentioned it to other people, like, oh, I don't want to do that. You know, it's funny. There was I don't know if you knew Bob Harrington, who was the Cabaret critic.
I know of him. I never met him, but yes.
Right. Okay. So we were very good friends in the 70s before any of this started, and I went to work at a magazine called Nightlife, and I was running it, and I was invited to everything, but I had gone to see those Gennaro sisters, Jane Gennaro, and they were at Caroline's on 8th before Caroline moved to the Seaport. And I went to see them, and I was thrilled by this. And I called Bob up and I said, look, I want somebody to write about Cabaret. And he's like, oh, nobody cares about that. I'd rather write about comedy. And meanwhile, he was working in social services in Nassau County at the time, but he was a good writer. I knew he was. And I persuaded him to write about Cabaret from my magazine. Then he went to Backstage. Then he went to the Post. And he was extremely influential in the late 80s before he passed away, and early 90s. And yeah, so I really pushed him into that. And I was so glad he did, because he did so much for that community.
So did you do a Cabaret as well, or you were mostly comedy? Or
I only was second string at the Post. I was second string for Cabaret and like third string for theater, but not Broadway, you know, like off Broadway. I did performance art, which was a lot of, I didn't know what it was when it started. You know, I don't know what is performance
doing
art.
It didn't know what the hell it was. Yeah.
And I would go to places like Dance Theater Workshop and PS 122 and all these kind of hole in the wall type places that were doing great stuff. Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg was at one of those places. I saw the Blue Man Group when they were playing in a basement. Wow. You know, for like $7 a ticket, and it was thrilling. And I a lot of times I didn't understand even what I was seeing. I just thought, am I falling asleep? Am I enjoying this? Is it fun? Is it making me, you know, excited? Would I recommend it? And that's what it became. You know, there were things I just didn't understand, and I felt uncomfortable writing about it. I think sometimes I maybe said something stupid because I didn't know what it was, but other times, I mean, I just saw some great work. That's one of the great things about New York,
Yeah.
Driving is the problem, but everything else is.
Well, no, New York has a lot of problems, but driving among them. But yeah, no, of course the theatrical community and the performance community
Yeah,
is
yeah,
unlike anywhere else in the world, up to and including Chicago, California, and London.
yeah. It's thrilling. It was then. I mean, as I got older, and I know like running all over the place, like I used to, being out all night. But it was just a great time at that. I'd go to a comedy club, I'd go to a performance space, I'd go here, I'd go there, I'd go to a cabaret, I'd have a drink and see who was there, and it was just great. Everybody would say, "Come in." See, everybody wanted, but I would always I would tell the publicist or the owners of the club, please don't ask me to come and review somebody who's not ready, because at the time, there was somebody at the Daily News, Hank Gallo, was writing a column about comedy, but he didn't really review, or not very much, and so basically I was it. And if I gave you a good review, Letterman's people would come down, HBO people would come down. It could change your life. And if I gave you a bad review, it was going to be very bad for you. And so that happened a few times where people wanted a review and just kept bugging me, and they weren't that good. And here they are. Well,
So, did you, when you knew it was going to be met, did you write the review, or you just kind of went and said, "No, I'm not going to publish"? It was great. Thank goodness.
It was very rarely that I would write a really horrible. I mean, that happened also at the Record when they asked me to do some restaurant stuff, and I go into this place and I'm like, look, this place is so horrible. Why would we even give space to telling people how horrible it is? There's nobody there anyway. Like, why are we even bothering with this? I don't want it. People think that critics just get this thrill out of writing a nasty review. And sometimes, that happens, but basically you're going out every night because you want to find something that's terrific.
And
you
the thing
recommend it.
The only time you do get a thrill out of writing a bad review is because you felt offended or unbelievably bored having to waste an hour or two of your life sitting through what you said. It isn't just like, oh, I'm going to destroy somebody. It's like, somebody just destroyed a piece of my soul, making me sit through that shit. Let me tell everyone.
No, I didn't. The only time I've had problems, if the comedian started bringing me into his act, I thought that was very unprofessional, and I did not like it while I'm working. You're working, I'm sitting there, and sometimes they didn't know what I was doing. They're like, "What are you doing?" Because they would see me looking down, and I know when I perform, if somebody's looking at their phone or whatever, they could be 800 people back, and I will see it. Even with the lights in my eyes, it's like, what is he doing? What is she doing? And it happened to me.
First instinct as a performer is to call them out.
It happened to me a couple of weeks ago where this woman, who later came up to me, "I'm your biggest fan, blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, I said, you're just sitting there with your phone. I have one here. Hello. And she's just like doing this. She wasn't texting or anything. She just was looking at it. And it was just driving me crazy. And she was right in my frame, and every time.
During the show, did you call her out, make fun?
Yes, I did. I did say something. I was like, "I went to Catholic school and I will smack you."
The comedian should have said that to you when you were in
yes,
right.
Well, anyway.
But let me talk about like the highest level, because you've also, as part of your job as a journalist and writer for the Bergen Record and you got to interview a passel of like being A-list Hollywood and TV stars.
Yeah.
So, who is like your absolute like favorite interview? It doesn't mean that the most famous, but like your favorite interview to do.
Two Italians, Al Pacino, who very rarely did interviews, but was someone that I really just. Well, what do I want to say? My idol. I don't want to sound like a teenager, but somebody that I really, whose work I truly was in awe of, and Liza Minnelli, and but a lot of people. I mean, there's so many people. Al Pacino, I interviewed for Sea of Love, which was a comeback for him. He had like 3, stinkers in a row. And I saw the Sea of Love, and I was like, this movie is terrific. I don't know if you remember it, with John Goodman and Alan Barkin. I interviewed all 3 of them, actually, for that movie. Like John Goodman, like Danny DeVito a lot. I interviewed him also from Jersey. And God, there's a whole list. My favorite story though is when I fell on Sean Connery.
Yes, you got it.
Do you like stories like that?
Yeah, of course.
I'm always telling this story, and people are sick of it. But if you've never heard it, I will tell you. I tell it to my friends; they're sick of it. But yeah, I had 2 interviews. I was at the New York Post. I had 2 interviews back to back. Well, like 2 hours in between. One was Mary Gross from Saturday Night Live, who was in a movie called Camp Beverly Hills with I don't know, there's a whole bunch of comedians in it, but and then Donna Summer, the singer, was about 2 hours later. So I had in between, and I'm walking down Madison Avenue where the hotels were, and I saw this Western wear shop that was having a sale on boots, and I like cowboy boots. So I went in, and there's these beautiful elk boots, which I'd never seen before. They were soft as butter. And I'm like, all right, but it's a little Western boutique, and there's one little love seat that a woman and her daughter are sitting at with 100 boxes in front of them. And I'm like, I'm never going to sit down here. So I have to try on these boots. So while I'm doing this with my winter coat, and I'm trying to get these boots on, and this man walks in, very tall man with a cowboy hat, beard, and a fur coat. Which, you have to be a certain type of
August.
You have to be, and you have to be a certain kind of guy to pull that off. Like nothing bothers you, And it was Sean Connery. And I'm trying on the boot, and he's walking behind me, and I just fell, and he caught me, and I heard his voice because I wasn't sure who it was when he walked in. But as soon as I heard his voice, I'm like, this can't be. And I'm like looking up as he's holding me, and he's like, are you all right? And I'm like, I am so embarrassed. I probably put an expletive in there also. I am so blanking embarrassed. And so he just laughed. He's like, you're fine. Okay, yeah. So anyway, I bought the boots.
You just bought the boots.
I go to the Donna Summer interview, and I'm carrying this big box. And she's like, what's that? I said, oh, I just bought these boots. They're elk. And they're so, and I was like, feel them. And she was like, I'm not feeling your boots. I said, I was wearing these boots when I fell on Sean Connery. And she's like, oh, so she
Actually, you should have gotten him to sign the boots. Be better than just sign them and sell them on eBay.
It's like, I was used to meeting people because of my job. I mean, in 1980, I started interviewing people. I started with kind of low-level celebrities and worked my way up. But, every so often you would come across somebody and you would actually just couldn't believe that you were in the, because you weren't prepared for it. It just was a chance meeting.
Let me ask you, who, especially if they're dead, feel free.
Especially if what?
Especially if they're dead. Who was an asshole? Who were terrible interviews, who were nasty, who were one monosyllable jerks?
Well, I avoided that. I'm actually pretty good. I was pretty good with people. And part of it was because I wasn't like, oh, I loved you this, I loved you that. I would just start talking about, did you see that thing on the news today? Or I like you. That's what Pacino was very nervous. And I don't, I think he's nervous of me. I work at the New York Post. Who cares? I'm just some kid from Long Island. But he was very nervous. And so the first thing I said, I said, I love that shirt you're wearing. He's like, really? Do you like it? Because it was like one of these, it had like, it's a certain type of sleeve, raglan sleeve or something. I don't know what it is. And it looked like it was made for him. And he just started talking about that, and it just kind of calmed him down so much. A person who was not, Richard Belzer was not an asshole. I was an asshole for taking this assignment because I didn't know anything about him. And I said, I've never seen him perform. I've never done this. I've never done that. And we started doing, I got my, this was what happened. My arm was twisted to do this interview.
This is around before Law and Order, obviously.
Oh, yeah. This is like in the 80s, like 87 maybe or something.
Before Hulk Hogan broke his neck,
Yeah, no, long before any of that stuff. And I'm like, and he walked out. He just walked out because he was just annoyed that I didn't know anything about it. And I was annoyed with myself for doing it. But in those days, it wasn't like you could just go on the computer and look up somebody's work. And I just felt like, don't ever do this again. So I didn't.
How did you, if you were prepping back in the 1980s, Dave had to do this too, but prepping a story for the Post, did you have to go onto microfiche? Did you have to visit the library? Did you make phone calls? How did you do
Well, no,
prep?
most of the times, I would go see somebody first.
Mm,
So it would be like, go see Rosie O'Donnell. She's funny. She won this or that. And, they weren't quite saturated on television yet, but I could see them.
yeah.
Tim Allen, Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg. Well, Whoopi I knew from the movies, obviously, but and then the usually the publicist, whoever sends you, or they used to send you a whole package of information. When I interviewed Steve Allen, he sent me it was like 18 pounds of stuff.
Was it from Steve Allen himself? Because he was an obsessive.
Yes, he was like, all the songs he has written, and Jack Parr used to tell a joke. He would say, he's written 500 songs, name two,
Evil.
which was kind of funny, but.
Because Steve Allen does not get the credit that he deserves for really pioneering.
Oh, no, he was terrific. And it was funny because I first of all, I'm like this tall and he was like up here somewhere. And I met him at a studio where he was finishing something and we were walking back to his hotel. And he's just walking ahead of me and I'm like trying to keep up with him. And I think he was just like, I have to just get this kid out of here and get this over with. And, but anyway, when we sat down to talk, I knew he was a smart guy. And I said, it always intrigued me how everybody, including the New York Times, when they wrote about Meeting of Minds, his PBS show, they always called it Meeting of the Minds.
Oh,
and
I always called it that too.
It stopped him in his tracks. And he's like, you're right. And then after that, he had this like sudden respect for me. And I think, you try to have anything in your back pocket when you're doing that to just kind of
that
get them on your side, win them over in some way.
Yeah.
Because I was a kid. I was just like still in my 20s when I started doing this. When I started doing interviews.
Who else? There was one. Well, you can tell the pee story if you want. You were peeing next to somebody, not on somebody.
How do you know the story?
Because I have the internet. I can do research.
No, I did it once. I wrote about it once on Facebook. Actually, I guess I did it twice, but I did it years ago. Famous people you've peed next to, because it was like a lot of people have that story. And, and then Johnny Carson would tell stories about people, he goes into the urinal and somebody starts asking for his autograph while he's peeing.
Yeah.
But the two people that I peed with were Mark Hamill from Star Wars, obviously. And
do you have a lightsaber or was it just a normal?
Yes, we crossed us light streams. And then John Corbett, who was, I guess people mostly know him from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. He was just about to come on to Sex and the City as the character of Aiden.
And
I think it's coming on to the new show next week, I think, back onto that show. But big, handsome guy, leather pants. I was at an HBO party. I think it was a party for Oz, the TV show Oz. And I used to love going to those parties. There'd be a party for The Sopranos, a party for Oz, a party for whatever, and like all these people would show up, and it would just be fun to just be at a party with all these HBO people. It was.
But you couldn't. But were you working? I mean, did you have to get quotes from all of them, or could you?
I was the Oz party. No, I think it was just we had written about them before. I had been to the set a couple of times.
Oh, nice.
And you met a lot of the guys. I met Rita Moreno, who was on that show for a while, and she was just thrilling. And then Chuck Zito, who had a role as like a mafioso, thug, and on the show. And he was funny because I had met him previously. He was Liza Minnelli's bodyguard when she was doing The Rink, I think, on Broadway. And I had met him before, and Liza introduced me in a dressing room. She goes, "This is Chuck." And then she said, "Chuck, show Bill your tattoo." And it's in here and it says tattoo.
All right.
So I looked at him and I wasn't sure it was the same person. But once I was with him, I never noticed it when he was on TV, but when I was with him in the same room, I was like, I met this guy before, And then I said, I met this guy, he had a tattoo and he did it. So
yeah.
the funny story about Oz, they moved to like Elizabeth, New Jersey, not Elizabeth, it was somewhere around there in a sketchy area of New Jersey. And
Is there a non-sketchy area? Yeah, sorry.
they
Yeah.
had been working in Chelsea, somewhere in Chelsea, and they had a studio. So they moved out to New Jersey, and they were doing this thing where a body is fished out of the water as part of a flashback on Oz. And they went to do it, and there was a real body.
And that's what happened to the previous.
They were like, oh my God. So they had to like call the police and everything. And
oh, that's fantastic.
they were like, is somebody do this? Like, no, this is a real body in the water. They were all set to set it up with a prop thing. I forget where that studio was in New Jersey, but they also did a beautiful mine there.
But let me ask you, Bill, we're talking, by the way, with Bill Ervolino. Do you have a few more minutes? I know
I have 6 hours. I'm going out for lobster later, but that's about it.
Oh, wow. If
My birthday lobster.
Hey, Mazel Tov, by the way, on his 68th birthday, Bill Ervolino today in the neighborhood with us. But you mentioned Mafia, and the name of your book that you wrote back in 1997, 98 was Some Kind of Wise Guy. So
Yeah.
did you have, as growing up, being Italian family, New Jersey, was there a connection? Was there, did you have any run-ins?
There was a mafioso in my family, one. A couple of generations back. I'm not from New Jersey. I'm from Queens. My parents are both from Brooklyn, so that's where that comes from.
Still, okay.
But there was one. But the thing is, I honestly didn't even make that connection when I picked that title. The title came from being like class clown, and I used to get. In high school I got hit because I went to Catholic school, but in junior high they would send me down to the dean's office. And so there was a woman who was a substitute, and I said something like, you should go to Hollywood, the walk would do you good, some corny joke I got out of a comic book or something. And I would go down, every time I went down to the dean, he'd be like, what are you, some kind of wise guy? And, and that's where that came from. And it was being the guy that's always shouting out funny things in class, and then either they laugh or they get mad. And then when I went to high school, forget it, and I'd get pulled out by my sideburns. And
really, in high school, I would figure it'd be the other way around, but
I went to Holy Cross in Flushing, and they like smack the hell out of you. And they don't do that anymore. No. And we just had our 50th reunion last year, and so many people showed up, and it was fun.
And everybody pulled up and showed the scars on their back.
Yes, everything. I saw that a few years ago at another event, I saw Brother Francis Ellis, who was the dean, who hit me so hard. I went through his office and into the hallway, and he hit me so hard because I weighed like 20 pounds, And I told him this whole story, and he goes, well, you look like you survived. And, it was like, we're building men here, So it was a jock school. It was, So
there was no level of wanting, like you can smack him. 50 years later.
He was like, he still then and before and everything, he was about, he was this hulking, he played football at Notre Dame. He was a big.
Even now you would not take him on, and even in fair fights.
Yes.
I get it.
Yes. Yeah. No. So anyway, and I was about 120 pounds, maybe. Plus, I had skipped a grade, and I was short to begin with, so I was like, the munchkin.
Hey, by the way, you mentioned being a class clown, which also brings up the fact, I think I read that you interviewed, so many comedians, of course, but George Carlin. Any Carlin stories? Is like, for me, the
yes, I every once in a while I would say to somebody, how do you feel about that joke you're telling? I didn't like when people told like AIDS jokes and stuff. I thought that was, people did not know how to proceed, I think, in those days. And it was and for a lot of people who were covering entertainment, and a lot of people in the entertainment business knew people who were sick. And I certainly did. I had worked with people, I knew people that I had, publicists and so on. And I was very sensitive to that. And he did not tell an AIDS joke. He told it. He talked about golfers and wearing those hats with the big puff on it.
Groucho Marx used to wear one of those when he was like 97 years old.
And he referred to it as one of those faggy hats. And I said, look, I'm just curious about it, because it's like, I know a lot of gay people, and I've never seen any one of them wear a hat like that. So I don't know why are you using that particular word? And I was with somebody who was, I guess his manager or publicist or whatever, who was looking at me like, this is George Carlin. You don't do that.
Well, you can do it,
but he said, you have a point. And so I said, I'm not here speaking for any community or anything. I'm just curious about it. Adam Sandler did an AIDS joke first time I saw him, and he immediately took it out. When he was working at the comic strip, I said, "Is that out?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm not doing it." And because a lot of times I think the joke comes from not so much what they're thinking or feeling, but what they think the people who are coming to see them are going to laugh at. And so that's like, you have to get past that. That's just whatever.
No, I mean, if you get someone like Kid Rock shooting at Bud Light cans, does he really, or is he appealing to the people who think that Kid Rock should shoot at Bud Light cans?
Yeah, I guess so. But that particular story, I've never even understood that story. They made a gift to this guy or woman or drag queen or whatever it was, and she was, I don't know. I don't want to mix up pronouns, but I don't know really the story.
No, but I
thought it was just a gift to one person, and I think people thought that this was going to be the new Bud Light can with this person on it, and that wasn't the case at all. So the whole thing seemed like white, And as someone with a journalistic background, this is what annoys me the most about the world I'm living in right now.
Here's the deal, though. As a comedian, though, I mean, you saw it from both sides. So you saw there was an AIDS joke. It really it's inappropriate. It's not good. He used the word faggy, which is kind of more, not even homophobic. It's a meme. It kind of conjures. It's the reason.
No, I understand the faggy thing. I mean, that's part of the language in the suburbs anyway. And it's just like retarded is like, it's so retarded is something that is not even used to refer to people. It's become another word.
Right.
Nobody uses it in that context anymore. But people who have someone in their family who's disabled get very offended by it. And it's like, I don't even think kids know that, make that connection anymore. They don't.
So where do you stand on a comedian choosing to use that word as part of an act? I was like, oh, this is so unbelievably retarded. I can't.
I have my judgment is right here. Either I'm laughing or I'm not, and I don't know why that is. I used to do the MC the shows at Gilda's Club in New Jersey, and the comics there was a contest for new comics, and from all different backgrounds. And so I would say to them before the show, look, you're going to be working for cancer patients and their families. I do not recommend coarse language or whatever. However, if that's what you want to do, try it. If it doesn't work, stop. That's it. That's my advice to you. I can't control what you're going to do. And there's a woman sitting there in the front, and she's, probably 70, and she's in a really, everybody is distasteful to her, and this kid comes out, this cute boy comes out telling dick jokes, and she's hilarious. She can't stop laughing, and it's like, there's no explanation for it.
Never know, my God.
It's like, it was like Adam Sandler. He came out, was the material great? No. He was just adorable. Everybody just thought he was, oh, he's so cute, and that was it. And if you knew guys like that at school, you were like, this is my buddy from school. If you thought he was cute, if you thought he was funny, he was like a son, he was whatever. He just was relatable to so many people.
So, but
he could get away with anything, almost.
But as a comedian, where are you in terms of the cancel? Because you have your own internal monitor of this feels right. This would have felt right 10 years ago. But
yeah, I said in 1992 or 1993 at a writers' meeting at the paper, I said, well, let's do a story about this politically correct stuff that it's over with and everyone. And it's like, no, it's just start. They were a little behind. Right. It had already started and I said, it's really terrible. This is going to not end well. And it hasn't. Especially for comics, it's like they can't say anything.
I do want to write about or talk about this. I read somewhere that you had some issues with making a joke or just some sort of something about Malia Obama. Like, is this true that you wrote something or said something?
Yeah. Oh God, that was a terrible thing. Yeah,
What
that
was?
was a terrible thing. But it was not, it was obviously not meant. Yeah, there was a picture of a dog. The Obama's dog was all dressed up.
Yeah.
And so the what do you call it? So I put a picture of the dog and I said, who would you rather see naked? And I was like, Barack, Michelle, and I put the Michelle's mother's name and then the dog, Bo. And then I'm like, no one's gonna know this name. And I said Malia, it was and then when it ran and everybody was like, what did you just write there? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my God. So I took it down. But there was someone who was involved in a lawsuit with the paper who picked it up immediately and made this big thing about it, that I was, some kind of freak. And it was awful. And it was just something that was just stupid and spur of the moment. It's quick change. It was on Facebook for maybe 5 minutes, and it came down. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh God, what's happened? So, I think you have to realize that, first of all, when somebody says something, and often it's a black thing or whatever, what is the intent here? What is this person about? Is this someone who is, anti-black or anti-this or whatever, or anti-Asian? Or is it just something that they said? Because comedians laugh at the sickest things.
Yes, absolutely.
They will laugh at the sickest things. What do you call it? When I interviewed Alan King, he toured with Judy Garland, who was often, very mood swings because of the medications and everything. And she would, about to go on, he would do the couple of swells number, that number where they're dressed as bums and they're
Yeah.
And they're dancing. And he would go out before with her and do this with her. And he goes, some nights she would just be so like this, and he would whisper the filthiest things into her ear. I want to do this to you and that to you, and she would just start laughing, and it would raise her spirit so much. So people when they're together or whatever, they will say like the stupidest, filthiest, disgusting things, and it's just a joke. And it's like, because I don't know, it's just how I think it's just how comedians are, because they're in a constant stream of humor that is work humor, and so they will condemn someone that's doing it on stage, but they themselves will just think it's hilarious.
You can't stop your mind. You can't stop from thinking. As soon as you've thought of it, you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah. It's just like, it's out there. And I see it. I watch often. I don't really watch it. I listen to like the first 15 minutes of The View. Well, it's more political now than it ever was, but I liked it when it was just them bantering about whatever. And sometimes they would just say things and I'd be like, oh no, that's going to be a problem. And this is how it is all the time now. And it's like, can you not have live people? Because they're, especially comics, the first thing that pops into their mind, they just say it.
You have to go. But by the way, we're talking with Bill Ervolino. Bill Ervolino, Ervolino. Bill Ervolino here on Dave's Gone By. Just a couple more minutes with you. I'm so thrilled that you've taken this time with us. But we want to make sure that people can either still buy your book, Some Kind of Wise Guy.
No, they cannot. They can get it on, I think there's certain places like on eBay or Amazon where you can buy older copies, because Record Books is no longer in business. The book came out in 1997.
Right.
That's a long time.
Dog. I see your dog in the background. Hello, dog.
Hi, doggy. Yeah, we did 5 printings of it. It was very successful. And when I do when I perform, it's almost exclusively in Bergen County, and I've done about 30 shows already this year. In one area, it's just the column had a very loyal following. They still will come out and see me, and I had 3 sold out events last week. I was thrilled. I did.
So where are you going to be for the rest of this month in August?
Nowhere. I'm taking off for August. I got Bananas called me up yesterday. Can you do a show August 5th or something? And I was like, I'm not working in August. Forget it, because I'm dealing with my back. I have to do a little rehab on my back, and I just don't want to keep doing this. You keep putting it off, and it just gets to the point. I'm not that young anymore. I can't bounce back from everything.
Are you going to have surgery? Is that the?
I hope not. But I have a problem with. I have a curvature. I have stenosis. I have arthritis in my back, and so I have to be not doing this. Actually, I have to be doing this. And part of it is being at this machine all day long. It's a problem. So
now let me ask you this: Of all the things that you have written, be it
Yeah.
columns, reviews, plays, anything, material, what are you most proud of? What do you think is your finest piece of written work?
That's, I don't know, but the piece that people almost always remember, actually I wrote in the early 80s in Nightlife magazine, and then I wrote it again in, I wrote a revised version of it in the Record. And it was about bringing a non-Italian girl home for Christmas Eve. And the girl doesn't like fish, and I don't know that until she's there. And this column, if you remember back, I know you're kind of, I don't know how old you are, but
Old enough. Old
all
enough.
right. So in the old days, my father would bring home these like dirty jokes and things that were like Xeroxed at the office, and everybody in the world would get a copy of this one. And then later on, it became people would email it, and you would get these stories that would circulate the world because they would go viral before there was an internet. And that's what happened with this story. And in fact, I went to Joy Behar's one day. I was interviewing her, and she's like, "Oh, have you seen this?" She had a pile of them like this, and it was this column from Nightlife, but my name had been on top, and whoever Xeroxed it wasn't there. I said, "I wrote this," and for years people would say, "Oh, you're doing that classic thing," and I said, "I wrote this."
Wow.
I said, "It's been copyrighted 3 times. It's in my book." It's like, and people were running it all over the place. When when the internet first started rolling, I did a search for the thing, and I found it on 312 websites.
So people can still read that even if they can't get your book too easily. They can still find your.
I sent a lot of complaint letters. I said, "Look, I don't mind if you're running it, but just put my name on it."
Yeah,
because this is going to go on forever. So this thing, and it's funny, and it's just about that great tradition of the Feast of the Fishes, and how, that there are people that don't, I mean, my family loves fish, but there are people that don't like it at all and won't eat any of it.
People are allergic,
Yes. So anyway, so it just was, I guess, your classic odd coupling type thing, and how people react to that. And
by the way, let me ask you, Bill. Speaking of bringing girls home, were you ever married? Do you have a girlfriend, a wife? Where are you at? What's your thing?
I am not married. I have not been married. I've come close a few times. And that's it. So if you want to go out, call me.
I unfortunately am taken
I would like to.
Miriam Libby. We have 27 and a half children.
Are these for real, by the way?
These, actually, to be honest, I grafted them from my pubes. They were just.
They look a little pubic. They puby.
I think look at them. Yeah. Some
Rabbi Longstocking.
Well, I'm more like pee-pee Longstocking if you saw my underpants. But I don't know where I'm going with that. I have no idea. We've been talking with Bill Ervolino, who is going to be probably in September, October, appearing.
Oh yeah, I do. I do a lot of library shows, which is a new thing. I started actually back in the 90s. They asked me, would you do some library shows? And in short order, I became the most requested speaker in the library system in Bergen County. And so now it started again. I just was asked to do it, and somebody said, "Oh, we had a good show here," and it's great. They have a nice budget for talent, and people will come out. I had 234 people. I remember the number. At a library last weekend, and it was our
Are
Thursday.
you doing the stand-up, or is it a different kind of piece that you do?
Well, you know what? I come up at the podium, I start to talk, and then it's not like the more hardcore stand-up of like, patrolling the stage, but it's still pretty much the same sort of thing. And I work more with the audience because they're there to, see me, and they want to hear about certain things anyway. So I ask them what they want to hear about. And it's more casual. It's a lot of fun. And everyone that I do, 4 more come in the next week. I get 4 more invitations because they're so successful. And I'm very happy about it. I'm just glad, because I retired for 2 years and I was like, oh, nobody's going to remember me. But that hasn't been the case. They really have. So
no, this is absolutely the one thing I will recommend that if people want to find out about you, they should be able to go to your website, but it's friggin' useless. It's like you have BillErvolino.com, but there's nothing on it. Last I saw.
No, I never. You know why I didn't start it? I was waiting because I was going to write. I was starting a novel, and I thought I will launch this. But then I stopped, and I had like 80 pages, and I said, let me write a play instead, and that's what happened. And so I wrote the play, and so I don't even know what happened. What do you see when you go there? Do you see anything?
Well, your name, but you can't really click. Log on afterward. You'll take a look.
Because you know what, I have like 7,600 people on Facebook, I think, and that's really suits my, that's been suiting my show. I publicize my events and my stories there.
No, but if you ever wanted to, let's say, put up the material for people to read, even if you're not getting paid, like your old book or your old columns.
I think I could probably do that at some point because the record owns it.
Yeah.
They paid me for it, but then the record was sold, and then Gannett was merged with something else, and I don't even think these people care what I'm doing. So
you never know. Yeah, I mean, maybe they would if you put it into a book again. And
yeah, that I could not do, but it's I think I could put some random stories on. I don't think anybody would be too upset about that.
And then you can point people from the Facebook page to go, hey, you want to read some of my stuff?
Yes. I can. I mean, I have the startup with the Facebook page to do anything. I mean, if I wanted to start the website, but I'm putting everything really on Facebook right now. So, I think, I don't know. I really thought I was going to retire and not do anything, but just play with my dog and go to the park. But that didn't work out. So I was teaching, I was performing, I was doing the library shows, I was writing a play and putting that up.
Last question for Bill Ervolino. So even if you can't find anything on his website yet, go to his Facebook page. It's Bill Irv, right? Or Bill Ervolino.
On Facebook, it's Bill Ervolino. It's a public. It's a regular page, but I've made it public, so anybody can go on there.
Let me ask the last question then. If you could, besides me, interview anybody alive or dead from history, who would it be?
I don't know. Lincoln.
Lincoln. Interesting.
I'm a big fan of Lincoln and also Benjamin Franklin. I have books everywhere on Benjamin Franklin. I think he's a fascinating person. And it's going to sound psychotic, but I have this fantasy every time I get on a plane that Ben Franklin is somehow sitting next to me. And he's like, how is this going to work? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how the TV works. There's that joke in the Woody Allen movie when he asks him about, religion and everything. And the father goes, I don't know how the can opener works. I really don't know. I'm so fascinated by the world and think of and fantasize about trying to show this to Ben Franklin because he invented so many things and he was such a mind, including
amazing to show him an airplane, show him you did the electricity thing, but look what Thomas Edison and his people did.
I think more than Lincoln, I think Ben Franklin is probably the most interesting to me historical figure. Religious figures are interesting too, but Ben Franklin is it for me. And so that's who I would pick, living or dead. And there's people I wish I had met. I did get to meet Jane Fonda. I did get to meet people that I wasn't really interviewing, but I wanted to at least meet them. And there's a long list of that. But I wish I had met Katharine Hepburn. And Claude Rains is one of my favorite actors who's been in so many great movies, Casablanca, Lawrence of Arabia.
And there's some of the, right? Oh, no, it was Herbert Lom. Sorry, I'm confusing them. Yes, sorry. Yeah. Yeah,
just people that I wish. And it's like, I know they're out there and somehow maybe I can make this happen. So I should do that more. But
absolutely.
Ben Franklin has escaped me.
Ben Franklin, why not? The light bulb went off in your head. I don't even know what the hell that means.
Tell me when the next Jewish holiday is because I can't keep track of them.
Next Jewish holiday is coming. It'll be Rosh Hashanah, essentially.
When is that?
2 weeks.
September?
What is Rosh Hashanah will probably be late August or early September. It's the Jewish New Year. You must know that.
I know that. I know. I remember it in September usually.
And then, of course, Yom Kippur, you would know because half the people at Bergen Record took the day off because they
There
had
you
to.
go.
So there you go. Anyway, BILL ERVOLINO, what a delight, what a joy, and wishing you more plays, more success, lots and lots of stand-up and library gigs, not just in Jersey, but elsewhere, in the real
Elsewhere.
world. Please come and do that, and we hope to see you back in the neighborhood too.
Mwah.
Wow. Have
Take
a,
care. Thank you for having me.
you betcha. Shalom to you.
Thank you. Bye.
BILL ERVOLINO, ladies and gentlemen, in the neighborhood. The time just flew, ladies and gentlemen, with BILL ERVOLINO on Dave's Gone By. I am Rabbi Sol Solomon.